Okay, so JavaScript. So JavaScript is more like the programming language part, right? So we had HTML, that is more like the markup language. We had the CSS, that is more like part of HTML to design the look and feel, how the web page looks like, or something like that. The JavaScript is going to do all the logical part. It will execute tasks for you, right? Like a full programming language. So this is more an interpreted language, not a full programming language by definition, because, well, traditionally when I think of programming language, they create some executable file like an exe file or some app. For this case, we just execute line by line, right? So that's why it is interpreted language. It provides dynamic interactivity on web pages. So the syntax is similar to C. It is a multi-paradigm language, event-driven. So based on event, you can have something new. Like if you click on a button, something will happen. Functional, you can write functions, right? So that is really the syntax is similar to C. So obviously we have functions. We have functions in other languages. Functions or procedure functions, or there are various names in Java or Python. And it's also object oriented, so you can create classes and then you can create objects for those classes. We are going to use that feature, the object oriented feature, in some of our future assignments. For the first one, I don't think that is necessary. You can just simply have a single JavaScript file without creating any complex classes. Then there are variables. So how do you define variables in JavaScript? There are two ways. You can use var or let to create local variables, right? So if you create something like this, you're not using var or let. This variable is global. It can be accessible from any functions. And this variable is using var. You can also use let similarly. I would prefer let, but the book, you see the book example, they use var. It's up to you, but both should work. There are some differences, like if you define it var, so it can only access inside the function, right? It was declared in. If a variable is declared with let, that can be accessed only inside the block. So this is more like scoping issue, and you may want to design how your variable scope will work in the code. But other than that, the variable types are pretty much similar to more or less other programming languages. So we have numbers, we have strings, we have booleans, object, null, undefined, and symbol. So numbers are mostly a combination of ints, floats, and other doubles. So C++, they have all those things. But here we have only number that can be integers or floating points, right? So for example, it can be this or this. We have strings, we have boolean, true, false, and then we have objects. You can define objects. We have null, undefined. Those are not going to be used a lot for our case, so I'll just skip that. We have arrays. In Python, we have more variations like list and other stuff. For JavaScript, we have arrays. So you can create like this 3-number array, 1, 2, 3, or you can create like new array, and then you can push and pop elements. You can add element using this push and remove element from the array using pop. Sort of like how the queue works as a data structure. You can also directly change something in the array. So before moving on, let's go ahead and start by creating some simple JavaScript files. And then we'll try the examples. Okay, so I'm going to create a new directory here, and I'm going to Let me first stop the server. So it's not necessary right now. Then I'm going to call this JS. So this is, I'm going to copy everything I have here and then add JavaScript. So this is JavaScript example. And then let me call this, the other one's HTML example. Okay, so I'm going to move everything here. And then I'm going to create a copy, the JavaScript example. So this is same as the HTML. I don't have any JavaScript here right now, right? So if I open this using the web browser, it will be opened as a file. Close this, and save, and save. And then I'm going to start from this HTML. Let me open with Atom as usual. And then I don't have any JavaScript here, right? But if I go to the slide, you'll see I need to write some sort of. So how do I add JavaScript? That is, I'm going to show you now. Okay, so for adding JavaScript, we have another tag called the script, right? So using the script, you can add JavaScript to your HTML. But first, you need to create a JavaScript file. So let's do that. Let's create a JavaScript file and then try the example code. So I'm creating a new file. I'm calling this main.js, right? And the file has nothing. Still, I'm going to open that. And since I'm going to write this code here, I'm going to keep this open. Okay. Now, how do you write a JavaScript code, or how do you write JavaScript file? So for the JavaScript file, it is, you start with a function. So I'm going to write a main function. So the syntax is similar to main, right? So for Python, a function is not necessary. If you write a C code, then the C code always looks for the main and then execute from the main, right? So we follow the similar syntax here. So we are always going to write a main function, and that main function will start as your point of starting the code. So I'm going to write this main function. Then inside the main function, I'm just going to print something. So for printing something in JavaScript, you can use this function called console.log. It is already here. So everything you print inside this will be shown in your console. So I'm going to print hello world or hello slugs maybe. So I have a main function. I have a JavaScript file. If I refresh this page, nothing is shown here, right? Even not on the console. So at this point, you may want to open the console by using this inspect option. So there is a shortcut for that. For Windows, that's Control-Shift-J. Let me do that. So if I use this button combination, it gives me the same thing, but directly to the console. So there is nothing on the console. So that was not printed, obviously, right? I didn't even add the script here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the script. somewhere. So I can add that to my head, but I can also add that to my body. So I have all these things. Let me do it in the beginning. So okay, let's do that. Okay, let me see what the book is doing. Okay, at this point, I am going to show you another. I'm taking shifting gear and taking you to the book example page. So if you go to the instruction, so the first instruction is telling you to download the draw rectangle example from the book. Which book? So the book is the referred book, and I believe that is mentioned in the home page. So our book for this course is this one, right? So if you click on the link, it will take you to Amazon page, but a lot of resources from the book is available free online. So if I search for this, it will take you to the Google site the book has. And in this site, they gave all the example codes, which you can directly copy and use. So for this case, I know that, let me check the instruction. So the instruction is just saying download the draw rectangle listing 2.1 page 11 example from the book. So how do you download a example from a page, right? So you can copy the code from the page, which may not work very well if you're copying from PDF. It's better to download that code from this web page. So you can download by chapter. So this is 2.1. I can go to chapter 2 and so I need the draw rectangles. This is 2.1. I think maybe it's in chapter 3. Hello triangle, or chapter 1. Okay, for some reason, hello canvas, hello point. Okay, maybe they removed the example from here, but you can get the example of the book. Then I would recommend downloading all the examples from here. So if you click on download all examples, there is another issue I'm seeing right now. They recently updated the site. Probably it will take you there and just tell you the redirecting you to this link. Nothing will happen. If that happens, copy the link. Then it will download the examples. So if I go to the show folders, I just downloaded before. So if you go to examples and then chapter 2, this one has this draw rectangle, the one we're looking for, right? Let me double check why it's not here. But for whatever reason, they removed it from here, but it's in the full list of examples. So nothing to worry. You can always use this draw rectangle files. So what I want to see now is where they're importing their JavaScript file. Is it in the head or in the body? So if I open, it's in the zip file, so let me copy it here. I can as well follow instruction. So it is telling me to copy it and then rename that one to assignment 0 and assignment 0 JavaScript, and then we need to create a directory called lib. So let's create something called assignment 0, and then inside that I'm going to put this. For now, I just want to see how they are. Okay, so this is our draw rectangle, right? So you can see they are adding their script here. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So just to make things consistent, so I'll add this script here. So script, then import our script, which is main.js, then source. The source is this. .js, and then I'm just going to close the tag. Okay. So if I run this, if there is no error on the console, then our script was downloaded successfully or added successfully. So apparently this is working, but I don't see anything on the console. It should show me this hello slug printed to the console as a log file. It is not happening because I'm not loading the main file, which you need to do with your body. So this body here, once the body is loaded, I want to use this unload option to load the main function. Okay, now I'm going to run this code, and you see this hello slug is printed here, right? Okay, now I know that this HTML file is running this JavaScript file as well. I can do a lot of stuff here in the function. So let's try the things we saw here. So we have variables, right? And then you can see you can print variables, and we have data types. So we have number, we have strings, we have boolean. Let's try all of this. So this is our first JavaScript function, and I'm going to create variable one. Let's make this one a floating point variable. Then create another one. Let's make this an int. Then create another variable. Let's make this one a string. And then let's create another variable. And let's make this one boolean. Then I can print all of them and see how it is working. So for each of them, I'm going to use a console log, or I can just print all of them in the same console log. V2, V3, V4, and see how it works. So V3 has already been declared. I have multiple declaration, which you can see cannot do it. You can see all of the variables are printed here. If I had multiple lines, it would be printed on multiple lines. Okay, then let's move on. So we have these data types. Then we can have this array. Let's create something. One. This is our first array. Let's make this. And then let's have another one. Let's see if we can have strings or a mixture. and if they're valid, we can print them. So console log, then I can print L1, and also let's use print L2 in a different one. So if I run the code, you can see it is printing the first array and the second array. Also, it shows you the index and the length, some additional info, which is sort of nicer, right? We have more info. Sometimes we have too much info, but if it is helpful, why not? But you can just see the result of the array. So as already mentioned, we can change the elements of the array. We can push and pop. Those are basic programmings. You will see the array is going to be useful. And then we can do this input output. So if the console log you show only on console, what if you want to show that as an alert or text input or pressed OK or something like these options? So let's try these things. So I want to alert maybe something like the alert I want to show L2. Is it possible? Like this. It is expecting a message, right? What if I done this? It is showing the full array, right? So this is my alert. We can take text input, then prompt this message. Remove the alert. We can have a variable. Let's use the exact same thing. Text 1. Then we can do the prompt. Inside that, you can say so it's telling me to input something. So you can put something here. Okay. So pressed OK will give you a button to press. You can do all the unary operators and the binary operators from the programming language like plus, minus, multiplication, division, remainder, and exponent. So let's try some of those things. I'm removing the complex stuffs from here, and let's console log v1 and v2 after adding them. So I can directly add them here. That is one possibility. We can also use a temporary variable. So let's do like v3. Here we can multiply maybe v1, v2, and then only print v3. Let's do both. Okay, I'm trying to reuse v3 again, which is not possible. So v5, and then I want to print the v5. So the bottom line is you can do all the mathematical operations here, right? You can use conditionals like if else. You can use multiple if else, right? For example, we can maybe try to detect if some number is odd or even, right? So let's try this. If you can try with v1 or v2. Let's go with v2. If v2 is 0, then what we can do, we can do a console log saying even, because this is even number, else we can say odd. So what is wrong with this? Did I remove something? So I have this here. Okay, let me double check. Oh, so this is not Python. Forgetting that. Should be like this. Yeah. So this is even. 70 is obviously even. And then if I make it 71, it will print odd, right? So you can use if else. Then you can use case statement. Not going to show an example because this is pretty much same as other programming languages. We have for loop. We can print all the element in something, some array using this let. So this part is similar to Python, right? So for let I in items, you can print that. Let's try two examples of for loop. So we need to use some variable here, pretty much like C. Let's print up to 10 maybe. Then we want to print the numbers, right? So I'm going to log like that, just print everything we have. Let's try to run this. So printing up to 9, sort of obvious. Let's create a list and see if we can do that. An array. Then let's take another one. J in another one. We can print the values. Actually, it's just printing the index because I need to. Yeah, so this is in is going to print the index. If you go off, then it will print the items. Or another option is we can do this. Using the index. So we have for loops. We can use while loops. I'm not going to show that since the same idea for other programming language. We can have a function that, for example, we can create a function that add two numbers. So let me remove everything here, after here, and then I'm writing a function add. I can have two numbers here, right? Maybe v1, v2, and then I can return one plus b2. That's a bad idea. Let's use the different variable names. So let's do a console log. And here I'm just going to call the add function and pass b1 and b2. So it is returning the result, right? So we have functions, and finally we have classes. So this is the syntax of how to write a class, which I don't think we're going to use a lot. Rather, I would show you some pointer how to start the assignment 0. And eventually we'll use more classes. Hopefully for the lab 1, I'll start with a class and then creating some object. But this is, you can see the idea. We can create the class by using a constructor. We can define the basic structure of the class. Then we can eventually create new objects for the class, and using the constructor, we can instantiate that. This is going to be super helpful when you have 3D objects. I think it is too early to do a deep dive into that. So before I move into the next part, which is again assignment 0, is there any question?